Hey, everybody, welcome back to Variant Intel. Today is episode 26, and we have a very special guest, Darren Bacon. He is the art director at Midnight Society. Darren, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Excited to
Yeah.
be here.
Yeah, I think we've been kind of trying to make this work for a while, and I think between game development and just general stuff, like it's there's a lot to navigate, but here we are, and I know we're super excited to have you. I know the community is absolutely going to love this. So again, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, obviously we just shipped Snapshot 7, so it's a good time to chat, reflect, like discuss all this stuff going forward. So yeah, yeah, like I said, happy to be here. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
No, absolutely. So like I said, you're the art director at Midnight Society, and I'm sure a lot of people are probably wondering, what that kind of is. So just real quick, give us a little breakdown of who you are, what your background is, and what you do for Midnight Society, and then we can roll right into some more nitty gritty stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so who I am, Darren Bacon. I got I mean, I guess I'll just like jump in. Like I've been at Midnight Society now for a year and a half or so. I was a early on ish hire, and I worked with Quinn Del Hoyo at 343 Industries on Halo Infinite and Halo 5. And so when Quinn formed the studio with the other founders like Guy and Sumit and Rob, um, kind of early on, I started chatting to him about it. Just because I was super keen to work on something new, and this seemed really exciting. I also had met um, Guy, like I don't know, sometime prior to that, and obviously was a fan of the doc stream. So yeah, and then Halo Infinite, I worked as art director on the multiplayer side. Prior to that, that was about a year up leading to launch, and then prior to that, I was working more broadly on the game, on like just general art direction stuff, like working with Sparth and Martin, the other art directors that were on, like Martin focusing on the campaign later on, and Sparth kind of working broadly. We worked hard to sort of push the art style back to like the legacy look, the Bungie era. That was like a big initiative of mine and the team. And then yeah, prior to working at 343, I had worked at Bungie on Destiny, so I kind of went backwards, like in development, working on Halo after Destiny. Um, yeah, so Destiny. Ship Vanilla Destiny as a senior concept artist there. Worked as a concept lead on Halo 5. Was really involved on the multiplayer side there as well. Multiplayer has always been a passion of mine. I like campaigns, but definitely more of a multiplayer guy. And yeah, and then the resume goes back from there, but that was like the last 10 years.
That's awesome, man. Yeah,
Get all
Destiny.
that, yeah.
So I was playing Destiny for many many years. I was there at the launch of Destiny 1. I don't know how long you were there before you went to Halo, but I think Taken King is, I mean, the what is it? The Vault of Glass is the OG, but the Taken King was an incredible expansion. And but yeah, I was a big Destiny guy, but I've been a long time Halo fan as well. Halo 1, 2, 3, like basically every installment I've been around for. So it's super
Yeah.
cool to hear of your lineage in the AAA space, and I'm sure a lot of people that probably weren't aware are going to be delighted to hear this about your resume. So yeah.
Yeah, I was a huge Halo nerd. In fact, the funny story about getting a job at Bungie was that I had been spamming them for so many years that when I finally got an interview in like 2011, I think,
Hmm.
um, I was living in the Bay Area at the time. They flew me up to Seattle, and then I was like, I couldn't connect with a driver picking me up at the airport because they had like an old resume on file from like years back.
Oh wow.
Um, with an old cell phone number, and so I almost didn't make the interview, but it worked out. So thankfully, but yeah, and then like even like Jerry, like he's the security guy, and I'd show up there, he's like, "You look familiar," and I was like, "Oh, sorry, like hope I wasn't creeping around here or something."
That's
Yeah,
funny,
so
man.
big Halo nerd, and then super stoked to work at Bungie, super stoked to work on Halo. So that's kind of yeah, that's my story.
Oh, that's incredible. I mean, for for those that have been following Midnight Society's journey thus far, you'll know that the studio is very heavily stacked with AAA talent and AAA pedigree as far, and like a lot of the people that are working there have long history in the AAA space with Destiny, Call of Duty, Halo, a lot of other titles. I mean, the talent at Midnight Society is, they're heavy hitters for sure. So
There's some crazy resumes.
yeah, and that's great because I think that just creates an interesting scenario. Even though it's a new indie developer, technically speaking, it's comprised of all this AAA talent, and and I think Deadrop is already the better for it. So that kind of leads right into the first question, which is going to be, you as the art director, kind of take us through like a little bit of the day to day process. How would you describe your role at MS, and and just in like in a general sense on how that all works?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the highest level breakdown is like all art assets are, more or less my problem or my fault, right? So like trying to make sure that like everything is at the highest quality as possible, and it's a juggling act between, resources and time.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's just like that's basically the game. Is like how can we get as much art at the best quality in the least amount of time? And so that means like working with other directors to help set direction, doing art myself sometimes, working with artists in the team regularly, doing reviews. Yeah, it is like more than a full-time job to say the least. Like there's a lot of spinning plates.
I could
Um,
imagine. I suppose kind of like piggybacking off of that, I guess would be like, is it fair to say that task priority lists are a huge deal for you guys, especially when you're running a team and trying to figure out what needs to get out the door first? Or is it not that simple, or is it more geared towards like, well, we have this priority list, but like just due to the nature of the creation of the assets, maybe there's limitations there. Like, how would you
mm.
kind of explain that?
Yeah, I mean, like setting that stuff is like the production side of it is definitely a part of it, especially because we're such a small studio. We don't have a ton of production support. Like Allison is doing everything, for
Hmm.
better or worse, and she's doing a great job. It's just that, yeah, it's obviously there's a ton of stuff to track. I think like another part of it, a good example of sort of like like a recent good example would be like for Snapshot 7. Um, I went to the directors, went to the founders and said like, "Hey, like I think a good idea would be like let's focus a bunch of art resources on the front end. Like let's go." So, we've created the two characters Pixel and Cassius.
Hmm.
We fully arted the armor set working with Brandon on the character and hard surface side. And the goal was to really just have like when you fired up the game, you were, you're sort of transported to the world of Dead Drop in the front end experience at least.
Hmm.
And obviously, the plan is like to totally rework that, like working with Kevin, now to sort of like start to figure out how we're going to represent the hideout in its final form. But for Snapshot 7, we really just wanted to have like a bunch of really nice art in the front end so that you were transported to this world, as you open up the software. And so that was the idea. And that was sort of like a direction set from my point of view, where I was like, I was getting really tired of firing up the game and seeing like work in progress assets just because it's just kind of, it just takes you out of it.
Yeah,
I think it's a little more forgiving when you're in the game because it's like there's compelling gameplay. But obviously we want everything arted completely, but it's just like a resource battle.
sure.
So yeah, so then it's like, okay, so then we just set that direction. We're like, all right, so we want to do the front end. So like, what is that going to take? And then we list it all out, and then we go, okay, we don't have enough, resources right now. So how do we get the help we need to do that? And then I work with Allison and Brandon and to try to figure out how we're going to get all this stuff done.
Oh,
So yeah.
that's great. That that, and I love conversations like these because again, it's kind of like we spoke in previous messages where back in the 90s when DVDs were still a thing, you had those extra discs that had, bonus 4 hour feature, just behind the scenes content. And like that idea does translate to video games too. Like you take any popular video game or your favorite ones, and anytime you found something on YouTube that had like, here's someone that drew the original art, or here's somebody who, this is what the level design was gonna be. And then it just, maybe there's all these deleted scenes or deleted content that didn't quite make the cut. Maybe it shows up later in DLC. Like as a gamer, I can say I've seen that be true. That anytime gamers can consume content like that, we just we eat it up. And so interviews like these are great for just such content. Seeing the developers and their processes in the background, and and it's, you start to get that sense of like, wow, there's really so much that goes into this. And our conversations, of course, barely scratch the surface of that, but nonetheless, it's always appreciated. So that's super super cool. Kind of right, segueing into the next one. The art in Snapshot 7, right? The big feature of Snapshot 7 is obviously the midnight ride, the car sequence leading into a match in the refiner state. And I gotta say, wow. My first reaction when we saw the initial trailers that Doc showed off on his stream was, it really just blew my mind personally, and I know it did for a lot of community members. Where we've seen snapshots come out, and they're at different stages of the art process, right? I forget all the names. I believe it's a
Yeah.
proxy, the block stage, and so to see Midnight Ride more or less be what seemed, correct me if I'm wrong, more of a finished art pass, or at least a really high quality art pass, was really really exciting. It's beautiful. It looks great. The footage was amazing. And so in contrast to other snapshots previous, how long has that been in development, and what were some challenges bringing the visuals for Midnight Ride to life for Snapshot 7?
Yeah. So it's been in development since not that long. I think Snapshot 6.
Oh wow.
The the big sort of hurdle was on the design side, just to get a track design locked so that art could go in there. Then from an art point of view, like the goal was really just to sell the the world, sort of like what we did with Snapshot 1 with the firing range. It was just to sort of set the tone, get the player immersed in this world. And yeah, but it wasn't a ton of time. But it wasn't too crazy on the art side. It's like the track is set up. There's a lot of tech art wins. Like we have a great tech art team, and the tech art team delivered some really cool solves for like building stuff on spline tools, and like making it so that it's doable in a pretty um procedural way. There's definitely a lot more we could do on the art side to plus it up. We have a long list of stuff that we didn't get to, just because we were like pushed for time.
Hmm.
But yeah, the whole idea, right, is just to stand up this like kind of like a vertical slice of the whole game, where you get an idea of like, hey, this is a wrapper for dropping into the map. And then you have your full gameplay loop. So it was really important for us to just stand up something, and we wanted to stand up something that looked as good as it can, or
Hmm.
as good as it could, in given our time frame. Which, yeah, like it's great feedback, and I agree. I think it's looking pretty good, and yeah, we're planning to push it even further. There's like a lot of
Wow.
set dressing, world building stuff we can do that just takes time. It's kind of like I was just talking to someone the other day who was, it was Ryan on Thompson on the engineering side. We are just chatting about how it's like there's this analogy of like building a house. I'm not sure if you've heard it, but basically it's like uh, it's something like 80% of the time goes into 20% of the, is that right? 80% of the effort goes into like 20% of the time. Something basically, it's like
Right.
you can frame the house really fast, and it starts to look like a house.
Hmm.
So if you're like building a house for someone, you'll frame the house out in like a few days or a week, and then they're like, wow, the house is almost done. But it's like, well, it really slows down when you like get into the details, and you're like doing the, like the finishing work.
Yeah.
Um, so we definitely stood up the house really fast with my broken analogy. Um, on the track experience, there's a ton, obviously there's a ton of design work we need to do, and there's a ton of finishing polish work that we intend to do. But yeah, that's sort of my long-winded answer.
No, that's great. No, no, and you know, just hearing you say that this is an experience that while you know you guys are of course proud of it, it's still got so much more that it will be when the polish and refinement comes in. It's actually pretty interesting to me to hear that because it does look so good, you know, and it's like wow, it's gonna eventually look even better, and of course there's gonna be more to it mechanically um, and then you know with Rob's AMA that he did explaining that the current goal, no promises being as it's a pre-alpha of course, but the current goal is that each sector would have its own track. But I mean, you know, Rob was very clear to say that these are, you know, it's an in development title. There's so many moving parts. So don't, you know, for the listener out there, don't quote me on any of that. You know, Deadrop is an incredible experience so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves. But for you, Darren, for visually, I think I can speak for the community and say that you know we're loving what we're seeing. It looks fantastic, and you know the thought of it just getting better is very exciting. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the typical process, the way this usually works is you'll have a design that gets approved, right? And
Mhm.
wherever we play the game, everyone's happy. And then you do an art pass. Typically, you'll throw a ton of art in there, and then regardless of what engine you're in, there'll be different constraints. Like for example, the Halo engine can like handle a lot of geo, but does other things poorly, right? Like, but every engine does stuff differently. So now with Halo with Unreal 5, right? Like you have nanite, so that again, geo isn't an issue, but there's like other issues, right? You might have like shader complexity, or there's like a million things that sort of could slow down performance. So what typically happens is art throws a bunch of art in there,
Mhm.
and then the gameplay slows way down, and
Mhm.
then there's an optimization pass, and then typically there's like another art pass, right? Like it's like this back and forth. And so it's like the art team usually, if there's time, like if you're at a big budget studio, they'll stand up a beauty corner, or sort of like an art direction corner, right? Where it's like this is the visual, this is the artistic style we're trying to hit. So like we have internal goals, like we have internal documents that like me and Greg and Howard have made, and the idea that we're pushing is it's like basically a Megascans look. So Megascans is like photogrammetry, and which basically means like you use photos to drive your textures.
Mhm.
So we're investigating um, pipelines and workflows that are emulating a photogrammetry look, but are doing it in like a procedural way that's
Mhm.
cheap on the performance side. So we've been standing that up, but we haven't had an opportunity to go like build that out and test it. But that is
Mhm.
our plan. Um, and so what you see in the car experience again is sort of like we've stood up this visual um, look, right? We're like, okay, this is the direction we were trying to go in, and we will continue to push it. And you'll see it like, performance is pretty good. Like the tech art team and the whole team did like a really good job of like getting the performance manageable for this
Mhm.
snapshot. Could be better, of course. But what we'll see is like you'll continue to see art get pushed and performance improve over time as we like lock down those things, and that's true in the sectors too.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah,
No, that's great. So I guess just so I understand correctly, so this procedural process that you guys are working on to try to implement is kind of like using photorealistic images that would portray the tone that you're chasing and put it in the engine in a way that is cheap on resources. Did I read that correctly?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like yeah,
Okay.
performant, lightweight,
Yeah.
like lightweight, not having to rely on like giant texture maps.
Okay. Yeah. And then I just have to ask. Let's say you get there, and you know, when we talk about like something simple, like, oh, this game's on PC, it's max settings. You know, it can be at like let's say 4K 30 or 4K 60 or whatever. Um, is I guess is Dead Drop like is the goal to have art and texture that can be scaled to that fidelity, or is that
Yep.
question not something that you guys are prepared to answer just yet?
No, yeah, we have a targeted min spec
Hmm.
which I think is the, let's see, Series S. I think it's the Series S.
Oh, right. For the consoles.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have a target min spec, and we have a GPU and a CPU corresponding to that the engineering team and tech are working off of.
Hmm.
And so there's sort of two ways you can build a game. You can build it for min spec, or you can build it for max spec. So if you build it for PC Ultra, it's great because you can get really cool visuals. So like a lot of it's what's frustrating to me as an art director that works in the game industry is like if you go onto Twitter or social media, right? Excuse me, X,
Yeah.
and you see someone post an Unreal 5 gameplay
Yeah.
video, right? And it looks stunning. And you're like,
Yeah.
damn, okay,
And then
Unreal
you get it
5.
on Series S and you're like, womp. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or like a lot of times that stuff is just frame dumped, like meaning they just like they
Right.
build it out and then they're just like the frame rate is so bad, so they just like dump the frames and compose it in Premiere and then put it on social media, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, it's amazing!" And everyone does, like I do,
Well,
like we
Twitter
all do.
compression doesn't help you guys at all, right? Like you could post your video, but then Twitter's compression is horrible. And I think it's kind of a meme at this point, like everybody knows.
Yeah, yeah, but I just mean like it's like and we've talked about this too. Like Midnight Society could have very easily. In fact, I honestly probably would have preferred it as an artist. We could have very easily just made incredible frame dumped trailers and like just gone in, not like just like locked cameras and like arted to the camera. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
but we're doing the opposite, which is we're just making a game from the ground up,
Yeah.
and no one else is doing that. And it's the hard way to go, and it's like it can be frustrating at times because you're just like, man, it'd be really fun to just like make some incredible art and like blow everybody away and like get a million impressions. You know what I mean? Like, um, but yeah, anyway, so we're not building for PC Ultra. You can, and you can get really stunning results that way. And you could even target your frame rate and target your resolution and all that stuff and like get really cool results. We're building for min spec, and the idea is that we want to I would like to art direct to that min spec, and then we're just going to turn on rendering
Yeah.
features. And it's the thing that like the the trade-off is that if you art for min spec, your PC Ultra settings won't look quite as incredible as if you had arted for PC Ultra,
That makes
just
sense.
because you know
Yeah.
what I mean. So it's like you're just coming at it from a different angle. But we are definitely gameplay first.
Hmm.
We are very much driving that direction and very conscious of frame rates. So it's like, obviously everyone's frustrated with the frame rates and the lighting and all that stuff. And it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, we're just working on it.
Yeah. And,
So
and, and
thanks for
I,
your patience.
And I definitely want, yeah, absolutely. And that's something I always try to stress to the viewers, like, for anyone that's new, that's coming to see this podcast for the first time, we always have to remind all the time, like, we are not even out of pre-alpha yet. This is still a very early title. The interesting thing, it's kind of twofold, right? It's on one side, like you were saying, the way you guys are developing openly, nobody else has really done this before. So in a lot of ways, this is new territory. Conversely, gamers are not used to seeing this too. Um, we're so focused on the quick satisfaction, right? The instant gratification of like, all right, game is out, game should work perfect because and that just comes from not really knowing the process behind it. And again, this is a new approach from a new studio. So it's not like whenever Call of Duty or something releases a beta and they say, here, sign up for the closed beta or the open beta, and then maybe the game releases 3 to 6 months after that point. No, this game is being built from scratch, and we're only a year and a half in on a AAA title. So, while I'm sure the developers like yourself understand the frustration that gamers have, I think it would be fair for us gamers to really just understand the context of it and say, "Oh, well, that makes sense, right?" Like, you tell me, Darren. I mean, you guys obviously want this game to be like finished yesterday, right? Y'all would love it to be just perfect in your
For
hands
sure.
right now, right?
Yeah.
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 I mean, if you could have everything you ever wanted. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, things take time, and you guys are killing it, by the way. So, real quick, just to keep on schedule here, so the next question is, when during this Snapshot 7 development specifically, were there any assets or things that you touch and are involved with specifically that you were the most excited about?
Yeah, I mean, like on the art side, I think the coolest, most exciting thing was the implementation of the vehicles.
Nice. Yeah.
I think the cars and the vehicles are going to be really cool for player expression. Like I even like last night I was in the game and like our hideout isn't done yet or whatever the front end.
Hmm.
But yeah, just this idea of like because like one of the things I want to try to figure out is like how can we like right now there's a car screen or whatever it's called vehicle screen. But yeah, like how can you just have like more visibility on that?
Hmm.
Because I went and got this, I got the scout paint, and I'm like, all right, I want to show this off, like you know what I mean. So yeah, that's definitely what I'm most excited about. I think that that in the character customization stuff is like what I'm most looking forward to digging into. Yeah, so
So the car, and character overall, like character customization, whether that's the player character or the car or any other future things that may tie into that system. That's something that's kind of your bread and butter,
yeah,
huh?
very interested in getting that solved and represented in game fast. The cars are there. We have a big modular plan for the cars, which
Hmm.
we are working on. Characters, we have a pretty good understanding of how we're going to work on that stuff. Same with like weapon skins, right? And so Rob was even touching on that in his AMA, like what we're going to do there and what the team's thinking about and trying to solve. So yeah, like we're that's like I think the next big push is to get all that stuff in game represented. And yeah, I'm really excited about that. I think just across the board, like it's a looter shooter. It's all about the loot, right? So
Yep. S-
we just got to have some really cool answers for that in the front
yeah.
end, and so that when we team up, like I can see what you got, and you can see what I got, right? Like
Yeah. I'm so Rob said he answered my question at at the last AMA, which was mine was the last one, and I asked about loot specifically. It's funny you mentioned that because I said my question was is is there going to be much more loot basically, because my argument is what's the point of extracting out of a game if there's nothing really on the loot side. So he confirmed that yes, there's going to be tons of loot. So um I'm excited that you're excited about loot because you guys are awesome with the art, and like knowing that there's gonna be a ton of loot in Dead Drop, I cannot wait to see like all the things. Give me all of them.
yeah, Quinn is very keen on getting that going. Yeah, it's just in development, but yes, there will be a lot of loot, no doubt.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So the last thing here is, if you can talk about this, what is your vision for a completed sector from a visual and art standpoint? What defines when a sector is like finished visually, or
Mhm.
rather complete in a sense of all that's left is just small tweaks here and there?
Yeah, it's kind of getting back to what we talked about on the performance side, but basically everything is a balance or a marriage of art, technology, and design. So, art can sort of set an initial direction, and we're doing that. So, like myself and like Eric Hallquist are doing a lot of concept art to build out these these spaces. And then, it's just a matter of like building out the geo, getting all the material work in, getting the lighting effects, all that stuff. And so, but then once you do that, then you have to balance with, you're balancing with the design, you're balancing with technology to make sure that it's performant. So like what can happen is you can get all that art in there, and then it'll it'll like you'll dump frames, right? And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, we have to do something about that. So it's like sometimes the art direction has to sort of take a back seat to tech, right? And so
Mhm.
and it depends on the level. Like some levels, like if you have a big open level with like giant sight lines, you might have really bad performance, and then you might have to make adjustments. Design might have to come in and put a big blocker there or something, and then art's that. So it's always this like back and forth between the three groups to get the level looking as best as it can at the highest frame rates it can, and that's the balancing act. So for me, to answer your question, it's like, yeah, we're going to stand up as much art we can in the level, as much 3D, and then we're going to be balancing it from there. And then I think like you kind of know, right? Like when it's like, all right, this is looking pretty good. We got our frames. Um, Design is happy. That's the paramount. Has to be fun.
Tell them, come on, Brad, get it together, right?
Yeah, we got to get Brad in there. Yeah,
Yeah, give me.
yeah, like
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, Brad. Yeah, Brad will be busy just tweaking stuff. Like there's always ways you can improve the levels
yeah.
for sure. I mean, they're great. He's doing an awesome job. But
No, all of you guys and gals are doing an incredible job at Midnight Society. We spoke at the live event, which was great to meet everybody in person and see some of you again from Snapshot 5. And like I mentioned to you in person there, um, you guys and gals are killing it. For a pre-alpha title, it's amazing how y'all have managed to over deliver every time. And I know I greatly appreciate all you guys and gals' hard work, and I'm sure the community does too. So good job.
yeah, cool. Yeah, it's good to hear. Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just would encourage you to hang tight. I think art, like I see, you'll see a lot of comments about art. It's like art is coming. There's a plan. We're going to like get all the artwork in there soon and make sure that it's at the right at the right performance level. So it's yeah, it's a balancing act.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so like even currently, like you saw improvements in sector 3, this snapshot where we had lighting improvements, but there's still like a lot of lighting work to do. Like for example, um, you might end up having too many lights in the level, have to turn off lights, and that's going to drastically change your look, right?
Hmm.
So even if art direction, even it's kind of like we're talking about too, like coming at it from min spec or art min spec or max spec, you can come at it from a different does philosophical approaches too, where you could say, oh, I'm the art director and this is my vision and this is what it's going to look like.
Hmm.
But if you were to build that level, like let's say it's darkly lit with a lot of point lights and spotlights, you know what I mean, casting shadows, and it could look really cool, but it might run at like 20 frames.
Right.
And so we can't do that. We're not making a PC Ultra campaign. We're making a, you
Right.
know, first person shooter multiplayer game with like 30 people in a vertical extraction shooter map with like long sight lines, tons of loot, um, car driving. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
it really is when you zoom out and take a look at like what the gameplay loop really is, which is cool about Snapshot 7, where this is the true first like showing of this is the dead drop gameplay loop that you guys have envisioned in its most basic understanding. Because like you said, there's so much more that's coming down the line. We have,
yeah.
Rob said they're shooting for 7 sectors in total. They're shooting for sector to sector gameplay also, so there is a lot to it. But yeah, the idea of like you leave the hideout, you get in the whip and head to the tower and just go and try to clean it out.
Yeah, also context for people too, right? When you think about how other video games are made, Fortnite is the closest analogy because it's that I can think of, being that it's Unreal and it's a battle royale. If you think about the island, it's this basically a big flat island, right?
Hmm.
And we're not doing that, so we've kind of broken the mold there, and that's cool. It's great from a gameplay point of view, but it makes it tricky on art and technology
Hmm.
because then you have these new different issues. Like for example, the map may not seem very big from a footprint standpoint, but it's like multiple stories. So if you were to lay out that level
Hmm.
flat, it's giant,
Yeah.
and it's like so then
Yeah,
you have to
it's a
come.
vertical extraction shooter for the listener that, like, again, for those tuning in for the first time, Deadrop is kind of the first of its genre, vertical extraction shooter. And to Darren's point, you're talking, what, 8, 10 stories vertically or
Yeah, it's a
more?
lot. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's very vertical. So yeah, then we have to rely on new procedural tools to solve these problems, and it's just not as basically. It's if we were just saying like, oh, we're going to make a PUBG map or a Fortnite map, right? It would be really easy. We could, also like you're just like, oh, I'll just go on the asset store and download some trees and some grass,
Yeah.
some rocks, and it's like, oh, we're good. Game's
Yeah.
done. We decided to build it in this giant, mega structure tower. And again, that's another thing. That's like a heavy lift. That's a ton of one-off art content that no one's ever seen before. Like Sector 3 is insane. You're in this giant, like,
I'll just pull out my 6 extra 4090s and
yeah,
yeah.
right, yeah,
It's crazy, man. But I mean, it's so early, and like as you and your team solve those problems, man. I mean, like I said, with what we're seeing now, I'm impressed. It's incredible.
yeah. I have joked around about that. Be like, all right, here's what we do. We make a Doctor Disrespect like 4090, and we go like, you got to pay to play.
Yeah. Oh no.
If you want to if you want to play this game, you got to go drop $3,000 on a GPU
Woo.
minimum.
Maybe 2 of them.
Yeah, two. Yeah,
2 time.
but no, two time. But that's not what we're doing, right? We're building a game to go across platforms, so we have to build min spec. But that is, it is funny you mention it, right? Because it's like that is what it feels like sometimes, but that is not the goal. That is just the stage we are at in development.
Yeah. And it is going to come to consoles for all my console peeps. They, Darren, I mean, how many times I know Rob's brought it up, and that seems to be one of his primary focuses moving forward is consoles. So console folks, you're not left out. We promise.
It's Rob's job officially. Where's the camera? This is Robert Bowling's job, but we are building for that spec.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So the last thing before we get out of here, is there any like last tidbits or any things for the community that you just would like to offer? And it's okay if you don't. That was the last little thing.
Oh, no, I think just like, we, all of us, myself included, the whole team, like we follow the Discord, Twitter, socials, all the feedback, the events, the in-person conversations very closely. We listen to it and we, incorporate it as much as we can. So keep it coming. Like like we love the feedback. We love the ideas. I'll say like this about the dev team. Like the dev team is very passionate and motivated, and I think we all get a lot out of talking to you all. So, yeah, thanks, thank you, community.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We appreciate, like I always say it. We appreciate everything you guys and gals do over there at Midnight Society. I think you're creating, we think you're creating something incredible. If the community is anything like me, we are just excited to be along for the ride. It's such an experience, and I can't wait for our console brethren to join us. It's going to be great. Darren, where's the best place people can interact with you?
Probably on Twitter or x.com.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it is easiest. I'm also on like Instagram and Discord, obviously. I was just alerted today that you were not able to add me as a friend on Discord, and I think I fixed that. So
well, okay, great. Yeah, we'll get that sorted, no problem. And
I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing.
Yeah, I check the security settings, make sure everything's good, because we don't want to like tip off Midnight Society security team, be like, hey, wait a minute,
Yeah.
So Darren, thank you so much for agreeing to join us today on the podcast. It means a whole ton to me personally, and of course to the community. I know they're going to enjoy this very much. And are we going to be seeing you for Friday Night Deadrop tonight?
Yes. Yes. I have some early Halloween commitments, and then I'll be in there.
All right. Well, thank you again, sir, for joining. It means a lot. We appreciate you. And for the viewers, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you don't miss out on future Variant Intel episodes. And with that, we're going to get out of here. We'll see you in the tower. Have a good one.
Bye.